You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz. Defending American exceptionalism and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Lanterns authorization code accepted. Logging in. Your access to the HollowNet has been approved. Please stand by.
Good afternoon, everybody. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm your host, Matt Holloway. Today is November 26th in the year of our Lord 2017. It is the end of Thanksgiving weekend, but can be just the beginning of our display of gratitude. And that's what today's show is about. We're going to discuss Operation Enduring Gratitude. I've got a great interview lined up for you with Mr. Charlie Ellis from that organization here in Phoenix. We're going to get to that at the bottom of the hour. Before we hit that, though, we need to discuss some interesting goings-on around the world. First, we go to Poland, where they're going to be closing the stores on Sunday. All that next here on the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around. Hey, everybody on Facebook Live. It happens sometimes. This is going to be a great show. I think you're really going to enjoy it. I'm up here in the chat, so feel free to pipe up if you have any questions. Have a really awesome interview here from Charlie Ellis here. I think you're going to enjoy it.
A responsibility and a duty greater than that of any civil war.
It is the common people of the world that are interested in this business. They know when we have war, it is they that have to bear the burden. It's their sisters and mothers and daughters that have to wait, trembling, to hear the news.
We are called as a people to give testimony in the sight of the world to our faith that the future shall belong to the free. Since this century's beginning, a time of tempest has seemed to come upon the continents of the earth.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. And let me remind you also that moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue.
I want the people of America
to be able to work less for the government and more for themselves. I want them to have the rewards of their own industry. This is the chief meaning of freedom. Until we can reestablish a condition under which the earnings of the people can be kept by the people, we are bound to suffer a very severe and distinct curtailment of our liberty.
You're listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HollowNet on Lanterns Media Network. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins here.
Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, the new conservative resistance begins right here, right now, with you. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network from beautiful, ridiculously sunny Phoenix, Arizona. I'm your host, Matt Holloway. Did want to kind of start out the show this week by pointing out there's something very un-Christmas-like and un-Thanksgiving-like when you're outside hanging Christmas lights and you're sweating profusely because it's in like the mid to high 80s. That's not really cool at all. Forgive the pun. Last night I was up doing the Christmas lights, and National Lampoon's ended up. And even though my house is not easily seen from the street, and not a lot of people around here go through the whole trouble, I grew up back east in the People's Republic of New Jersey, where Christmas lighting is a bit of a contest. In some towns, quite literally, it's a contest. Some neighborhoods even have prizes and things like that. But I remember some of the happiest times of my childhood were rigging up the Christmas lights with my mother and with my dearly departed grandfather. And I got one of the highest compliments I think I've ever received from my aunt. Deb lives out in New Jersey still. She's the eldest of the sisters, the matriarch of the family, self-titled, and she said that Grandpa would have been very happy with the display that I put up. So get a little choked, a little bit, just a little bit. But yeah, so hanging up the Christmas lights in Phoenix, Arizona. I mean, it's almost decorating a palm tree in Hawaii, almost. There are days that I miss the snow and the cold. Yesterday was one of them. But you can't shovel sunshine. You cannot shovel sunshine. It doesn't hurt your back. So there's that benefit. So go Arizona. On that note, I'm actually going to get to, the important stuff that I'm supposed to talk about on my podcast, like maybe news and things that are going on in the world. So let's talk about it. Let's pick it apart here. Story that I picked up off the Associated Press yesterday. You might have seen it on the HollowNet Facebook. Poland is set to phase out Sunday shopping by the year 2020. Whoa! A little bit of a jalapeno for the soul, a little shot out of left field. That definitely got my attention just because in a world where Christian values seem to be taking a significant backseat to secularization, especially in Europe, where, numbers of the ratio of tush in pew has significantly declined over the course of the last 50 years as the Industrial Revolution and the Internet age have crept on. We find ourselves with less and less believers. Here you have Poland taking a major stand in the name of Christianity, in the name of the Sabbath, that they will be closing the stores on Sundays. The text reads, this is from, again, Associated Press, Warsaw, Poland. Poland's lawmakers on Friday approved a law that will phase out Sunday shopping by the year 2020, despite criticism that it may eliminate thousands of jobs. Proposed by trade unions that want shop and trade workers to spend more time with families, the bill got support from the ruling party that adheres to Catholic values. Critics say it will negatively affect Poland's economy, eliminating tens of thousands of jobs, and hurt supermarket chains, which are mostly Western. Now, I just want to kind of point something out here. As someone who in my previous position worked with Europe significantly, I worked with a lot of partners in Europe. And, if you didn't take so many mandatory freaking vacations, just putting this out there, if you did not take quite so many mandatory vacations, you might have an easier time with your economy. I mean, most of the European groups that I worked with, they took a lot of time off. I mean, you had like mandatory 3-month vacation out of the year. Basically, I think it came out to like 38 days or something that they actually had to take mandatorily. That's like public paid holidays recognized in the EU. If you look at it, the ratio is insane of the amount of paid holidays and paid vacation time that the EU gets as opposed to the United States or Japan, for example. So I'm just going to kind of call out our friends in the Polish legislature there and say, you know, I bet you could handle closing on Sunday, maybe if you didn't take that holiday to Greece. So, yeah, there's that. Shots fired, man down. Maybe think before you crap post on your Catholic values friends. I mean, is there a big call in the world to bring back the Sabbath day and make it holy and make it so that stores close? Now, I'm a little bit guilty on this one because on Thanksgiving, my family and I, we do our Thanksgiving on Friday because we have relatives that have to drive in, this, that, and the other thing. And we've, in the past, we've actually gone out to like Denny's on Thanksgiving and relax. We tip very well. But I've always kind of thought about it like, hey, you know, I really don't like perpetuating that whole, you know, you need to be open on Thanksgiving thing. I don't like being part of that. So I've kind of pushed back on that over the course of the last couple of years. And that kind of brings me to this, thinking about Sunday. I mean, would you be opposed if your movie theater were closed on Sundays, or if the stores that you took for convenience were closed on Sundays? Would there be a pushback against this here in the United States, where, again, we are more of a secular state, but where we more celebrate the freedom of religion? And part of the freedom of religion definitely has to be the freedom to observe the Sabbath. So let's think about that, and really where you would stand. I mean, were you in Warsaw, Poland today? Would you be fighting back against having the stores close on Sundays, or would you be for it? I'm a little torn, because on the one hand, you know, I like the Sabbath. I like keeping it holy. I believe that's the Lord's day. I mean, but here I am working on a Sunday. Think about it. I mean, granted, it's something I love, but it's still work at the end of the day, isn't it? I mean, if all things being equal, my dreams come true, you know, everything works out great, and I start getting paid to do this for a living, then I'm working. So that's not really keeping the Sabbath. So how do you support this without being a hypocrite? Or can you support this without being a hypocrite? I suppose at the end of the day, it comes down to what the will of the people is. And the will of the people in the nation of Poland was to elect a mainly Catholic, values-facing government. So, I think, great for them. I don't think such legislation would have even the slightest chance of flying here in the United States. But, you know, I find it fascinating that a nation that is within the European Union, as secularized as they are, actually managed to get this passed. So I am very excited to see whether this actually pans out into anything. So let's keep our eyes peeled on it, and let's see what comes of it. Now, another news that I want to make sure we address before we hit the bottom of the hour is, first and foremost, the Saudi Arabians, the Saudi Crown Prince, has led a meeting of the Islamic Military Alliance, and I think there's some critical information and quite a bit of posturing that's coming out of that meeting. And this is something that, again, the news is so wrapped up in talking about who's doing who with what to even give a whether care to. And in addition to that, we're going to take a look into, regrettably, the FBI seems to be gleefully reporting record-breaking number of background checks to Black Friday, which means gun sales at a record-breaking high. I say regrettably, not because I don't want people buying guns. I say regrettably because that's an awful lot of people getting added to a government list, you know what I mean? So we'll tackle that when we come back from this quick break. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. Keep it dialed in. And if you want to jump on Facebook, we're at facebook.com/HollowNet, streaming live right now. You can also contact us on Twitter at Matt D. Holloway. And as always, check us out on lanterns.buzz and TheHollowNet.com. Hey everybody, this is Matt Holloway. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network, and I want to thank you for your continued listenership and readership and all the support that you've given me and everyone here at Lanterns over the course of the last year or so. Now, as we come up on a year of delivering this podcast on a weekly basis, we've begun to feel a bit more like a community here at Lanterns.buzz, and right now, we're a community that's in need of assistance. So I wanted to call on all of you today, if you can, to log on to patreon.com and search for Lanterns on patreon.com. That's patreon.com/lanterns, because we need your assistance in order to build this network out bigger, stronger, and better than it's ever been. With your support, we can bring in more voices that have been stifled. We can celebrate American exceptionalism. We can grow and educate our people. We can lift a lantern to shine a light into the darkness. Our mission is to shine a light on the actions that our government is taking now or have taken in the past to threaten the rights of Americans without consideration to the political party or organization. We will expose destructive counterculture that aim to destroy the idea of America and celebrate the parts of our culture that live up to the great ideals formally expressed by our founders. Up until now, our entire operations have been funded from the generous contributions of our team members. That generosity has created a growing demand for our pro-American content, and with that growth has come new challenges to expand our operations. Our goal is to expand and maintain the operations of our website and the radio network. And we humbly and graciously ask that you consider supporting Lanterns.buzz by becoming a patron on patreon.com. Again, that's www.patreon.com/lanterns.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HollowNet on Lanterns Media Network. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins here.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the HollowNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network from beautiful sunny Phoenix, Arizona. I'm Matt Holloway. Turning back to the AP, story by John Gambrell in Dubai of the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia's assertive assertive Crown Prince on Sunday opened the first high-level meeting of a kingdom-led alliance of Muslim nations against terrorism, vowing that extremists will no longer, quote, tarnish our beautiful religion, end quote. Mohammed bin Salman's words come as the Islamic State group, which sparked the creation of the alliance, has been driven out of Iraq and lost its self-described capital in Syria. However, the alliance doesn't include Iran, Iraq, or Syria, while member nation Qatar sent no one to attend the one-day Riyadh gathering amid a diplomatic standoff between Doha and the 4 Arab nations led by the kingdom. Now, the Saudis announced this alliance in December 2015 when the Crown Prince was still only the defense minister. Since then, his father, King Salman, has elevated the 32-year-old prince to be next in line for the throne in the oil-rich kingdom. The alliance, which initially announced with 34 nations, now includes 41, according to the Saudi government. And they say that Sunday's meeting sends, quote, a strong signal that we're going to work together and coordinate together to support each other. They also go on to say, the biggest danger of this terrorism and extremism is the tarnishing of the reputation of our beloved religion. We will not allow this to happen. Now, all of this, just to give you some context, is amidst a major gear-up, an arms race, if you will, of political rhetoric and also of really unusual alliances. Last week's show, I referenced the Saudi military and power complex seeming to cozy up to the Israeli military and power complex, which is decidedly unusual, given the fact that Saudi Arabia, to this day, says that recognition of the Israeli state will hinge only upon their withdrawal from formerly Arab-held territories. But this tension between Iran, who controls the Houthi rebels in Yemen, who also controls and works with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and also in Syria, is creating some strange bedfellows indeed. So Saudi Arabia's tall talk in this defense ministry level meeting shouldn't be ignored. We need to pay careful attention to this developing situation in the Middle East. Now, I also wanted to jump in a little bit to the Black Friday story, but this one's going to get passed around an awful lot, so I'll be very brief on it. But according to Chris Enlow over at the Blaze Weekend Editor, Black Friday 2017 saw a record number of background check requests for firearm purchases, the FBI revealed Saturday. According to stats, there were 203,086 requests for background checks on firearms purchases Friday, setting a new all-time record for single-day requests, the previous record set back in 2016. Last Black Friday. So, news but not news. Hashtag not surprised. I think these are all valid things to say. But what is more important, and what we're going to dig into a little bit more after we take one last really quick break before we dive into this interview, is we're going to discuss the nature of gratitude and how best we can show the unending, enduring gratitude of the American people to our veterans, those who have stood in the line of fire in defense of our nation and upholding the principles of America. All that when we come back from this real quick break. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. When we come back, we're with Charlie Ellis of Operation Enduring Gratitude. Don't miss it. It's a hell of an interview.
I see people coming together not for divisiveness of party or for dichotomy of thought, but for unity in principle. And the principles that founded our nation, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Today, ladies and gentlemen, those principles are under the sternest attack that we have seen in many generations. It has become a crime in this nation nearly to express a difference in opinion from what is held by your party to be doctrine, from what is purported by the media to be truth. We have an opportunity to reach out to our fellow Americans regardless of their creed and regardless of their political inclinations, and unite as Americans, not as Republicans or as Democrats, as liberals or conservatives, but to unite around the principles that have guided this nation so well. I've covered a lot of stories, but the story that remains untold is the story of America in the 21st century, when we choose to turn back the tide against progressive socialism, when we choose to embrace the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights, when we remember what it is to be Americans. And that principle will not die as long as there is one man, one woman, one child who looks defiantly into the night and says, I am free.
You're listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HollowNet on Lanterns Media Network. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins here.
Incoming transmission.
You're listening to the HollowNet on Lanterns Media Network. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins here.
And we're back. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. Joining us on the program, we have Charlie Ellis of Operation Enduring Gratitude, who's going to tell us a little more about his organization and the vital work that they're doing. And I think it's crucially important that we recognize charitable work like this, and the very nature of it ties in with the Thanksgiving holiday. I mean, the very name of it, Operation Enduring Gratitude, the giving of thanks to those who have given so much to our country. And just want to go ahead and welcome him on the show. Welcome to the show, Charlie.
Hey, Matthew, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate you taking time to interview us and find out a little bit more about Operation Enduring Gratitude and what people can do to join in the cause.
Absolutely, Charlie. So we spoke a couple of days ago by phone. I know you and I have been back and forth a little bit, but I think I might have more of a benefit of the backstory of Operation Enduring Gratitude than members of our audience might have. So why don't you kind of give me that anecdote, tell me that story of how Operation Enduring Gratitude came about, and kind of explain what it is that you and your group are doing.
Well, Operation Enduring Gratitude comes together probably a little more than 5-6 years ago. At that time, I re-enlisted into the Arizona Army National Guard at 43 years of age, which is quite a ripe age for re-enlistment. And as I was walking around getting used to the new troop members, or I guess I'm the new one, and just getting used to the other guys in my unit, started talking with some of the guys and find out a little bit about their personal lives and such. And one of the young soldiers I had spoken with was telling me about what he does for work, which was just a general construction laborer. And I said, well, how's that working out? He goes, I just need more money. And the obvious question is, well, yeah, we all need money, but why you in particular? And he had indicated that his girlfriend had moved in with him. She mothered his baby. They were taking care of her sister and her mother, and he was the sole income or sole source of income for this family. And he was early 20s, maybe 21, 22.
That's a story we hear a lot, isn't
it? It is, and it's also the American story. We get young, we get married, we fall in love, we get married. Hopefully we stay in love once we're married and so on. But the burden generally, and it's not a sexist thing, it's just cultural, I suppose, that generally the man or the male in the family will take on the burden of leading the family, providing the income. And here's this guy, he's going to do his darndest to be that man in his family. And so when I started talking to him, I asked him, well, do you know about this support? Do you know about that support? Do you know about this support? And he's looking at me shaking his head like he's got no clue that these resources are out there. And for a young person of relatively any age, starting a family, taking on the sole support of 4, almost 5 people, they need help. Otherwise, everything goes sideways on that individual and the family that he is trying to provide for. So prior to my enlistment, I've been working with a lot of nonprofits in the West Valley out in Maryville. And so I started learning more and more about what services are available to people who have financial needs. And not people that necessarily want to be on welfare, but just need that little extra bump so that they can advance in their career and be more stable for their family. So I started sharing with him about these resources, and he looked at me like I was talking Chinese to him. He had no clue these resources were in existence, no clue on how to reach out to them. So I hooked him up with the people that I know, and he was able to get the assistances that he needed. And so during that time frame, I had got a call from another nonprofit in Maryville who needed some help with a curbside appeal program on one of the neighbors' houses. And at that time, this nonprofit only did work on houses that you can see the work from the street, hence the term curbside appeal. And so doing exterior door repairs was not something that they would do. So they reached out to me. I said, sure. I went over there and looked at it, and the house was falling apart. By the time I got through that door to look at it, the kitchen sink, it drained into a Home Depot bucket, so the lady can take the bucket around to the bathroom and dump it into the toilet.
Oh, my God.
And that's how she drained her kitchen sink. How she got hot water, she boiled it in the stove right next to the sink and dumped it into a plastic tub so she can wash her own dishes.
So these are third world conditions right here in Phoenix.
This is
basically
67th Avenue and Indian School.
Oh, my God.
Right dead center metropolitan Phoenix, where everything is available. Not south of the border, not foreign countries, not third world stuff. Backyard. This is in our own backyard. And so I started taking pictures of it, sending it to my buddy at the other nonprofit, telling him we need to do more. He goes, what do you want to do? My immediate response was, let's rebuild it for her. And so over a short period of time, he took it to his board of directors. They gave a green light, an enthusiastic green light, so kudos to them for that. And from there, it was just a matter of knocking on doors and asking people if they wanted to help. And I was completely amazed at how well the local community in the West Valley rallied together to help build or rebuild a house for a woman that none of them even knew. They didn't ask her politics, they didn't ask her race, they didn't ask anything other than, how can we help? So we jumped on that. And so we were able to rebuild her house, and by rebuilding her house, what I mean by that is there was not a single unbroken window in that house. Every window was broken. And the funny part is there were a lot of campaign signs that were used to fix her windows. So God bless the politicians for running. They repair broken windows, I suppose.
It seems like the empty words of politicians were good for something.
Yeah, if you don't keep your promise, we'll make you. So that was quite funny. Side note, I suppose. So I reached out to the Window Depot. They said yes. They're off of 43rd and Camelback, so they said yes. I gave them the measurements. They gave me all the windows, so we installed the windows, all the exterior doors. We did all the flooring. We repainted the house, the interior, exterior. Rebuilt the entire kitchen, rebuilt the ceiling in the hall bedroom, redid all the doors in the house. Joe Cool rebuilt the air conditioner, which she only had a swap cooler on the roof. So what I mean by rebuilt the air conditioner, actually, they rebuilt the gas furnace. She had no furnace in her home for I don't know how many years.
So wait. She had no heating, no cooling.
Correct.
No, well, severely damaged or lacking plumbing in the home. No ability to keep the elements out because the windows were broken and were sealed, so to speak, with campaign signs and other debris in many places. This sounds more like a shantytown outside of Mexico City or in sub-Saharan Africa more than it sounds like downtown Phoenix.
Well, my one of the strongest volunteers we had on that project was my nephew, David. And David kept shaking his head looking at this thing as we were working on it. And my nephew is a Marine. He's done 6 deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq. And he used to tell me, he goes, I've kicked in doors on houses in better shape than this one.
Oh, my God. Charlie,
inside of a war zone.
Now, not to interrupt your train of thought too much, for the audience just tuning in, we're talking about Operation Enduring Gratitude, which is a nonprofit organization here in the Phoenix area that essentially does rebuilds like wish houses, basically for veterans who have served our nation and are now on hard times. And Charlie, aside from being a military man who went back for more, went into the Arizona National Guard. By the way, thank you for your service. You are a contractor by trade, I understand.
Correct, yeah.
Okay,
I've been in the construction industry nearly my whole life.
So, I mean, and we're talking about heavy construction. We're not talking about, me at 13 years old learning how to kick carpet and hang drywall from my dad. We're talking about, like, building whole homes.
Yeah, I cut my teeth in the trades as I grew up. Later on became a general contractor and so on and so on. So I took my skill sets and moved it over to the nonprofit world. So if we show up to rebuild your house, we're not just people who want to help. We also know how to help. So sometimes that stuff can go backwards.
So this is kind of a step above and beyond, say, what Habitats for Humanity, with all due respect to that organization, what they would be able to provide, because a lot of that is volunteers with varying levels of let's be blunt about it, varying levels of competencies, because they're people who are simply donating their time and under the guidance of contractors and what have you are building homes. But in this situation, it's mainly the companies themselves, the contractors like yourself, and the providers of the materials that are lending the time, the money, and the supplies, correct?
When possible, that's absolutely the way I want to do it. I'm kind of shadowing what Habitat does to some degree, not entirely. One of the things that we like to do on our programs is we like to embed skill sets that are individuals that have been in the trades their whole life, or they do it for a living. They're not just out on a Saturday practicing.
Okay.
So we have to have, when it comes down to it, you got to have skill sets to build houses. If it was, I have a friend who says, well, all you got to do is show them how to do it, and it's pretty simple. Well, if it was simple, everybody would do it. And a housing industry in the state of Arizona, I believe, is our second largest industry in the whole state. So it's not simple enough that anybody can do it, but it is certainly comprehensible enough that anybody can learn it if they wish. And so we try and incorporate a little bit of both. We train them for the day and hopefully teach them some skill sets that if they want to come back next weekend, we don't have to teach them the same thing we just taught them. So it's educational as well as just being involved.
So building that core competency for future projects as well. Now, before we bump into this 15-minute break here, I want to ask you a little bit about Project Ammo. Now, Project Ammo is a new program that Operation Enduring Gratitude has been engaged in, and you discussed this with me briefly, but it's access mobility ramps, affectionately known as ammo ramps, for mobility impaired and otherwise restricted veterans. And what can you tell us about Operation Ramp Up?
Well, Operation Ramp Up came as a result of some efforts I did probably eight, maybe 9 years ago, when I was asked by a nonprofit in the West Valley to come out and replace a wooden ramp at somebody's front door. So I went over there, I looked at it and said, okay, we can do this. And I went out and bought all the exterior grade plywood, wood, 2x4s and so on to build this ramp to sit outside the front door of this house to last whatever length of time you can make it last. And the homeowners, they were incredibly grateful that somebody put a ramp at their front door for free. And so we wave and say goodbye. And as I'm driving away, I'm realizing that it's just wood. It's sitting out in the elements. It's going to fall apart eventually. Somebody's going to have to rebuild it again. And so I stared at that thing as I was driving away thinking, we should do that a little bit different. Fast forward about three-something years later, when we wrap up doing the house for the lady I described earlier in this segment, I had asked my buddy, I said, how come we don't do anything like this in the West Valley for veterans? He looks at me and says, you haven't started it yet. I said, oh, crap. All right, challenge accepted. So I ran with it and put together Operation Enduring Gratitude, filed all my paperwork, so on and so on. And then he called me back up and said, hey, I got this grant application on my desk. Come on over, help me fill it out. So I went over and we started filling it out. He grabs it, puts a pencil on it, and says, what do you want to do? I go, I don't know. You called me here. He goes, this is for you. This is for Operation Enduring Gratitude. What do you want to do? I said, I know what I want to do. I want to build wheelchair ramps. He goes, okay, that'll be easy out of wood. I go, no, out of concrete. Let's build them out of concrete so they last forever. And he's like, all right. So we start filling it out. 2 months later, we get a call from Home Depot. Your grant has been accepted. You got $4,000. Go build. I'm like, holy crap, $4,000? Let's go build. So we started running around, knocking on doors and so on and so on. Finally had one guy respond. He said, yeah, can you build this ramp for me? And I looked at it, and he had probably 12, maybe 16 lineal foot of plywood coming off of his front door, leading straight out into the grass in his front yard. And it was all dilapidated. You could tell when it rains on, and in Arizona, it so-called never rains, but when it does, it hits hard, and you really are going to have to go in and out of the house while it's still raining, so the excess strain on the plywood during the rain, blah, 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 that kind of story. So I said, sure. So we tore that piece of plywood out, went down to Home Depot, bought 36 bags of concrete. Me and my Marine nephew, took us 2 days to mix that by hand, poured it in place, and that was, to me, one of the most exciting things in the world to watch somebody go, wow, just this sincere appreciation in his eyes, because two dudes knocked on his door and said, hey, we want to put a concrete wheelchair ramp in your front yard. And so he was incredibly happy. But at that time, the genesis of Ramp Up began, because he kept saying, well, can you make it a little longer? Can you make it a little wider? Can you make it comfortable for me, is what he was asking without using those words. Mm-hmm. And so as I was saying yes, I kept asking him, sure, not a problem, tell me why. And he started talking about, well, I got to position my vehicle just right, I got to do this just right. Everything about parking in the driveway had to be just right to get onto his wheelchair ramp. And so when we were done driving away, I took a picture of that thing, and I've stared at that so many times trying to figure out how can we make this thing not better, but as close to perfect as possible and still do it for free. And so we came up with a ramp process that I call super ramps, because they are extremely large. And during the marketing process of this, and by marketing I mean reaching out to the community for volunteers, the community for donations, more importantly, the community for recipients. Finding our recipients has been a nightmare. They will not self-identify. Nobody's standing out there with their hands raised saying, hey, I need a ramp. Hey, I'm handicapped, I need a ramp. They're not doing that. So we've tweaked a few things. We've looked at different directions. And so one of the things that we've done is we've eliminated the word wheelchair. By calling it a wheelchair ramp, immediately people in walkers think they don't qualify. Mm-hmm. In the past, as of today, we provided 15 wheelchair ramps so far for veterans all over the West Valley, and one up in the reservation up in northern Arizona for Navajo Code Talker. We did that February 2016. And they all keep coming back with the mindset of it's got to be positioned right so I can park right. It's got to be positioned. So in the ammo ramp program, we make the ramps with the approval of the homeowners and our veterans. We make them as large as humanly possible for that location. And some of our ramps have been over 400 square feet.
Wow.
If a veteran, yeah, it's pretty 400 square feet. That's the size of most people's living rooms.
I was about to say, I have friends who've lived in apartments smaller than that.
Yeah, and it's insane.
Hey, Charlie.
And they're not all. Yeah.
Charlie, we're going to take a quick break real fast, and then when we come back, I really hate to cut things short, but I want to ask you to kind of go into how we can help. I mean, how do we identify those veterans? You know, how do we get the people connected to the assistance that they can get, and how the audience can pitch in and become a part of Operation Enduring Gratitude, and I'll have you run through that real quick just as soon as we come back from this quick break.
Roger that.
Thanks, Charlie.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HollowNet on Lanterns Media Network. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins here.
All right, we're back. We're speaking with Charlie Ellis from Operation Enduring Gratitude. Specifically, we're discussing Operation Ramp Up, which provides probably the coolest name for a home access ramp that I've ever heard, the Ammo Ramp, to kind of give it a bit more of a positive spin for our veterans and our servicemen and women who find themselves in need of this assistance, but I'll say may consider themselves ineligible because they're not per se in a wheelchair. Maybe they're in a scooter or some other mobility device, and they feel that a wheelchair accessibility ramp wouldn't be applicable to them. And Charlie, I know that our men and women in the military, there's a certain amount of pride that's accompanying that, and it's rightly earned. Do you find that to be a bit of a challenge when we're talking about self-identification as well?
I think everybody finds that a challenge. Employers find it a challenge. And actually, I was talking to one of our large corporate employers here in Arizona a few months ago, and they're the ones who brought up the term self-identify to me, so it's not something I've learned because I'm smart. But yeah, the self-identification needs for veterans are very difficult because we're trained to be independent, we're trained to think, we're trained to find our own resources, and we're trained to do things on our own, whether trained through life, certainly, trained through the military, definitely, but trained through just existing. And so one of the hardest things to do is to communicate to veteran. Asking for assistance is not a declaration of weakness. It's just a momentary time in your life that you need help here. When we were in the military, when we had supply issues, we would go to the supply sergeant and go, hey, Sarge, I need whatever this need was, or go to their squad leader, hey, we didn't have a problem asking when we were in the units or in our companies or while in service, so why do we have the problem when we're out?
I've got kind of the civilian's view of the military. I haven't served personally. I have members of my family who've served. But what kind of comes to my mind, and you can fill me in if I'm in the wrong or if I've just seen too many movies. But during, PT and obstacle courses, there's the moment where, you have somebody perched on top of the wall and they got the hand reaching down to pull up the next man. Is that an accurate thing? Is that something that actually happens?
It does, especially when it's in training. One of the things we always do is we teach each other to rely on each other, because one of the there's a tone inside of the military. You don't hear it out loud too often, but it's out there that when our troops go to war, and point of clarity, I've never been deployed to combat. I've only served 10 years in the National Guard, trained for deployment twice, but never deployed. So. Mm-hmm. But what troops say when they're leaving, going to war, and going to do their job overseas, there's a very, very high value placed on the fact that all you have to rely on is the guy next to you. And you're fighting for him, because we say, oh, let's go to war, let's fight for God, country, mom, and apple pie. That's not it on the battlefield. We're fighting to save our buddy next to us. And so the military trains us to focus on if he stays alive, I stay alive. So keep your eyes peeled for your buddy, and it's a buddy system. And the Army calls them battle buddies. I don't know what everybody else does. I kind of think it's a strange juvenile term, but that's just my
I've
opinion.
heard it before.
Yeah, but we're trained to rely on each other. When we get to the civilian world, I don't know why we still don't do that.
Well, it sounds to me like...
That is a struggle.
It sounds very much to me as if this is your way and the other participants in Operation Enduring Gratitude's way to reach the hand down the wall and pull up the next man. And to provide that hand up, and there's absolutely no dishonor in accepting a hand up from your brother or from your sister. And
absolutely.
I think correct. I think to anyone listening who finds themselves in need of these kind of services and this kind of assistance, that'd be the message that I give, that there is absolutely no dishonor when you've given the best years of your life and your health to serving your country. There's no dishonor in accepting this kind of assistance when it's given. Now, before we wrap up, and before I wish you well, sir, I wanted to ask if you could provide us some information about how to find Operation Enduring Gratitude and how we can help. What's the website, what's the Facebook, what's the Twitter?
Operation Enduring Gratitude has a website. Obviously, it's OperationEnduringGratitude.org, O-R-G. Our social media tags are embedded on the homepage of that website. So you can just go to the website, OperationEnduringGratitude.org. And, I chose Enduring Gratitude kind of as a playoff of Enduring Freedom, because there's a great amount of people who understand what Enduring Freedom was all about and currently still is about. And so I figured I'd piggyback on the Enduring Freedom, and those who fought for freedom have earned a little bit of gratitude. I'm not certain how much gratitude, but, you stand in front of a bullet, I appreciate that. If you stand ready to stand in front of a bullet, I appreciate that as well. And if you're heading to stand there, I'm definitely appreciative of that. So we chose Enduring Gratitude to reflect a mindset that needs to prevail amongst all people. Whether you got family members who've served, whether you've served, whether or not you know any of that. But it does not take 6 degrees of separation to find a veteran that you personally know. So if you know a veteran who has an access issue, whether they're in walkers, wheelchairs, or the power scooters, please reach out to me. My email address is on the website. Eventually, we're going to gear up a little bit stronger here next year with our web presence, and hopefully more and more interviews on the news and televisions and so on, radio. We're not hard to find. You just got to look for us, OperationEnduringGratitude.org.
Fantastic, Charlie. And as far as gratitude is concerned, I want to thank you so much and your whole team for everything that you're doing. I agree with you that the gratitude of the nation, there isn't enough ways that we can express the amount of gratitude that we have and that we should have for our men and women at arms who, as you said, are willing to step in front of a bullet for our freedoms and for our principles.
Absolutely.
So Absolutely. Again, I thank you for coming on the show today. Everybody, you'll be able to find links to Operation Enduring Gratitude on TheHollowNet.com, Facebook.com/HollowNet, and I'll be tweeting these at Matt D. Holloway at TheHollowNet to make sure you can find those links. Donate if you can, if that means donating your time, your money, your building materials. If it means referring somebody who is in need of this kind of assistance, that's equally as valuable, because they're having a great deal of difficulty identifying people to receive these benefits because a lot of them aren't willing to self-identify because it's hard sometimes to admit that you need that hand and to admit that you need help from your brothers and sisters. But with that, Charlie, thank you so much for joining us today. God bless you and your team and all that you're doing. And I hope to hear back from you again soon next year as you ramp up, if you'll forgive the god-awful pun.
Actually, that's part of the name, Operation Ramp Up.
We'll hope to have you back on, sir, and be able to discuss the great work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a good day.
You too, Charlie. Well, folks, that about wraps it up for the HollowNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. So glad that we got to have Charlie on the show. I know we're kind of bumping into the clock a little bit, so at this point, I'll leave it at this. You can find Operation Enduring Gratitude on OperationEnduringGratitude.org. That's on our Facebook page, facebook.com/HollowNet, right in the comments section of this video. So please give them a check out if you could. And I'll cap it off as I always do, quoting my good friend Jonathan Dunn from The Blaze, The Freedom's Disciple. This is yet another example of America being great because America is good. So from here in Phoenix, at the Lanterns Media Network, good night. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Hey everyone, this is Matt Holloway, and I hope you're enjoying our podcast so far. It's been exciting putting this together for you, and I'm looking forward to many more to come. I did want to let you know that in setting up the HollowNet and getting everything launched here, we've gone ahead and set up a page on Patreon.com. Now, if you haven't heard of Patreon, Patreon is a website that's similar to other crowdfunding sources that allows you to support on a month-to-month basis those sources, those artists, and those groups that you really care about and that you're passionate about. And I hope that we can ignite passion in a lot of people to become more involved in the political process, and also to become involved in the conversation and to keep that political dialogue alive. So I'd like to humbly ask you today to consider becoming a patron of the HollowNet on Patreon.com, and you can access that at Patreon.com/TheHollowNet. We have various levels of patronage. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month, which unlocks exclusive content for the Patreon community, such as a feed of patron-only content. Then you have a $5 option, which gives you behind-the-scenes access to blog about the different inspirations that we have. It'll give you access to patrons-only polling. And then we have a $10 option, which gives you a signed digital poster plus everything else. $20 option, which gives you name in the credits on the site, and all other rewards. And we even have a segment sponsor package available on Patreon, which is $125 a month, which entitles you and your business to a 60-second ad as a segment sponsor during the podcast, of course, subject to content approval. So if you would like to become a patron of the HollowNet, we would be greatly thankful to you, and it's going to go toward a solid cause of generating this sort of millennial, constitutional, conservative content that is so lacking in our media today. So thank you for your time, for your consideration, and for being a part of the HollowNet. Here we hold the line against the night, and the millennial conservative resistance begins here.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.